I don't think I need a huge amount of these in, like, en masse. I'll need a couple, for sure, because they're required for some of the advanced mechanism here. Like, fusion reactor, jeez. I don't know if I'm going to make a fusion reactor. It was generating a crap load of energy, and fusion is actually pretty safe once you get to it. It's the getting to it part. Because that needs polonium and stuff. Okay, and I don't have any pipe upgrades left? Oh, I got one. Okay. Pretty sure I just needed 64 of these anyways. Because I just need a full stack of this. And a full stack of this. Oh, actually, no. I'm going to need 2 full stacks of these. Also more dust. Fortunately, we have lots of... Oh, actually, hang on. Fortunately, we actually have some of this. This works. Aha! I'm still going to crush up a few more. Crusher, crusher, crusher. And we may end up with an extra of these. Unless I do that. I'm going to need more electrum plates, though. Electrum. Let's use up the electrum essence. And then we can make more electrum as we may need. Okay, this is where we grab a barrel. For the multi-servo... And we do input on the top and auto that, because we're absolutely going to do lots of these. Yeah. We're just going to do a buttload of this all at once. Okay. And I need... Where's my gear working die? Where did I put my gear working die? Oh, it's in here. Alright. That's fine. Because it requires electrum plates. I also need quartz glass. I'm going to need a lot of quartz glass. If you're wondering why I wasn't using that recipe before, because it actually gives you more dust than you would for... More dust per essence than you get crystals per essence. I think they took out... Yeah, they took it out. They took out the recipe to turn the dust into crystals. So once it's dust, it's dust. There's nothing you can do about it. But the advantage is that you get crystals from... well, I mean, you can turn charged crystals into regular crystals, I guess, but that's not the main reason. It's because you do crystal growth. And you can turn these... They decay when they grow, but you can also turn them up. Can I... Chipped... Flawed? Yeah, flawed is as good as it gets. Budding quartz can be found in meteorites or be regenerated using charged quartz in water. So it gives a near infinite amount. You can make flawless quartz. If you can find flawless budding quartz and then like claim it, you can set up crystal growth accelerators and some destruction planes and just eat those forever and just have an infinite amount of quartz crystals, which also works. I had that set up in Cave Block, but I couldn't get that same system replicated for Amethyst. I mean, not that I need it for right now, because the amount of Amethyst I need is negligible. And the amount I get from the essence is pretty spectacular. I can make calcite with it, but we're just going to make all the Amethyst. That's another thing we're going to have to automate. Again, I want to get my molecular assemblers working first. So, look, we have 11,000 Amethyst shards. I'm using, like, 1 per 5, like, machine core frames. So, negligible amount. It's really negligible. Alright. And that's the thing I was on before I went down this rabbit hole. Let's start crushing some stuff. You're still making electrum plates. I could probably upgrade you with the Dragon Steel Draconic Integral Components, but that's as far as it goes. There is no Twinite Integral Components in this pack, which is a mild irritant. One of these days. Good enough. How many can we get? We got an amount. We're almost there. Yeah, I think that's enough. Okay, now we need some pattern providers. No advanced pattern providers this time, I'm afraid. So we need 32 of these, so we got 32 pattern providers, so we need 64 of the crafting tables. See, we are out of oak as well. My system was extracting oak into the charcoal drawer, just so we'd have charcoal and creosote, but I think we're okay now on that. We will eventually teach the ME system how to do that. Just make a bunch of stacks. So I need a full stack's worth of the crafting tables. We can make some pattern providers. Of course, we don't have enough cores. Okay. I guess we're making some more. Silicon... Redstone. Silicon logic. Okay, given how fast these advanced describers are going, when I get the automation system for that working out too, that'll be also pretty good. I will need, however, far less. I will need far less materials than I'm using right now for. Than I'm making, I should say, for this purpose. Okay, well that's going. Let's see, what else do I need? How are we for Fluix? Let's just crush up some more just in case. How are we for quartz? Wrong quartz. We're okay there. I don't know if the quartz, this quartz dust is used for anything. It's used for twinite stuff. And there is a little bit of shellite stuff, but I'm not using shellite for a huge amount. Which, by the way, also doesn't exist as an armor. I checked. Probably wouldn't hurt, I guess. But I suppose it wouldn't hurt to, like, pre-grind a few of these if I could. That's probably more than enough. Alright, because we're only making 32 of these, right? So we got 17. So we'll need 32. And we have 12 only, so let's do another 32 total. And we'll end up short one, of course, but that's okay. I don't mind having that extra piece there, but now we can do the thing. Alright, let's make some dense cables. Now we're going to make some dense Fluix cables. Alright, also, how much wool have we got? Not a lot. Can we make more string? We don't have a lot of string either. Can we make string from things? We have some flax, but I don't have flax seeds. Oh, I do have flax seeds. Let's make a garden cloche for flax seeds, I guess. Ooh, actually, better still, instead of the garden cloche, because it's good and cheap, but I don't care about energy anymore, we're going to make a phytogenic insulator. We're going to over crank it and make all the flax that we'll ever need forever. I even have the machine frame already made, which is convenient. Alright, I need a cyclic reprocessor, which I don't have any of the parts for this, so Signalium, 4 silver, 2 Constantin. Get a gear working die. Making a gear. Oh, I need one more Signalium. Wasn't paying attention. It's fine. Alright, so that's the cyclic reprocessor. We'll need 2 flux linkage. And I'd like to upgrade these to Enderium while we're here. And I will need a integral component as well. These two become gears. Oh wait, I need more than two. Need 3 more on top of that. Because we do this, and then we're out of those gears. That's fine. I can't do Shellite yet. Well, I could probably do Shellite. I just don't have the Shellite on hand this instant. Also, I don't know how much Shulker shells I have. Not a huge amount. So I'll have to make a Shulker spawner and just farm the shells. We'll see where that takes me. But then we can do Twinite later as well. But that's a thing. Integral components, however. Oh, we even have... I think we even have a thing already. Yes, we do. So let's make some more Signalium. We have a spare integral. And this requires Lumium. How much do we have of the Lumium gears? Do we have everything we need? Yes, we do. Alright, so we just need the Signalium gears. Integral and integral. Alright, so now we can do flax. I just need to hook it up to water and electrical and give it a drawer. Give me a drawer. And then we'll hook up that drawer to another storage bus like over here somewhere. Since we're connected this way, we can run a line over here to a storage bus as well. So if I just slap down this phytogenic here, we can plug in some power. All the things, give it a flax seed, give it some power. Give it a fluid pipe. Set up your rear for input and your top for output with auto eject. Drawer on top. And theoretically, you should now eject the flax. There we go. How about that? So this, in the phytogenic insulator, will always produce flax seeds, will always produce flax. But it will eventually overflow, so we're going to replace this drawer with a double drawer and put a chest upgrade on, or a drawer upgrade on it. And then we can lock it, because that just, see, that just made a thing, right? So let's just do that. Okay, we'll put a drawer upgrade on it and a void upgrade just so we can delete the excess. I don't know how much we're going to need, so we're just going to make a stupid drawer upgrade. Oh, we even seem to have some gold ones left. That's fine. Oh. That's not expensive at all. This is stupid expensive, excessive. Super don't need this, but I'm doing it anyways. Bap. And then we go void upgrade. Bap. And then we just need to connect it to a storage bus now. We're going to make 2 of these storage buses. Because reasons. And that was the interfaces so that we can make the storage buses. Alright, so now we can slap a storage bus directly onto that, and directly onto that. I love that they can exist on the same block space. That is so convenient. Device online. Okay, now if I ask this thing for flax... Hey, look! We have flax! Which is useful because now we can make all the string. Which we can then turn into wool. Which we're going to need. I still don't have enough, so I'm going to have to let that eat for a minute. In the meantime, we can start plotting out my my auto constructor matrix. I think the easiest way for me to do it is to do it like this. One. I find it easier to do a nice vertical setup. Is there enough room for that? Yes, there is. Two, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3, 4. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Give me my wand. This is how I do this so quickly. I've done this a few times. This is the easier method of doing this. Wherever my wand has gone to. I'm blind. Where's my wand? I don't know what that's in there for. Where's my indestructible building wand? I made one. Did I put it in here by mistake? I did. I also can put that away now because I no longer need it. Because now I can just do this. Okay, so I could just go up and click it a bunch, or I could do this. Bop. 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 Okay, and there has to be a gap. Because if there is no gap, they will try and connect via channels, and you can only have 8 channels through actual blocks. And it gets dumb about it. Alright, so we'll run a connector cable up the top end over to the top here, but we're going to need dense cables, and I do not have enough wool for that. I also do not have enough Fluix cables for that. That'll be enough Fluix for now. That's the other thing I wanted the quartz for. Fluix. We got lots. Because I wanted this stuff. And I only made a little bit. The advantage is, this is what happens. I spent all of maybe 5 minutes building that, right? This phytogenic insulator is crazy. I should probably lock it though, because I feel like that's going to double stack if I'm not careful with it. I mean, I could also do a sheep seed, I suppose, if I really had to. You make Fluffy Puff into wool with this stuff, I guess. I'm not a fan of that particular recipe, given that I don't have any Fluffy Puff. I would need to harvest some fluffy seeds and grow those instead, which, again, shrug. Very shrug-worthy. It's excessive how quickly this stuff grows. Also, I have a ton of this industrial hemp that I've been growing. I should use that up. It's not as efficient as the flax, but I can use it for right now. Here's a stack. That's going to give me 16 whole Fluix dense cables. $32. Now let's make them smart cables while we're at it. Give me a wrench. Alright, it's mostly the wool. So... connect it like this. Error, too many channels. Device offline. It's not too many channels. It just thinks it is. It's an ad hoc right now, so it's got too many channels. Ta-da! 32 out of 32 channels. How's about that? So it says too many channels because it's an ad hoc network and it doesn't know what to do with it. But now that I've connected it to the controller, it doesn't care. 32 is fine. But that did take most of my cabling. But now we have molecular assemblers. Hooray! Alas, I can't access said things until I make a terminal for it, so I better do that. I need... Oh, did I put it in my backpack? I did. Glass cable. Red glass cable. Time for some more terminals. Alright. Terminal. So we've got a crafting terminal. I will need a pattern access terminal, which means I'll need to make one more of these pattern providers anyways. Alright, so we now have the pattern access terminal, and we will need a pattern encoding terminal, which needs another crafting terminal just as well. I just need to make myself some more diamond things. And silicon and engineering. Oh, stretch. Ugh. I even have some spare logic circuits in here. You know what I would really love? I don't know if this is ever going to be, like, possible to be a thing, because it's just a little bit too much like, it's just a little bit too much like, RS. But what would be nice is if we could have a crafting terminal that was like a full block. Because they already do that with interfaces and pattern providers and a few of the other blocks on here, so it wouldn't be too far of a stretch to include something like that. And it'd be just like, oh, well, whatever face you have open is the terminal, and you can just multi-face it. That would be nice, right? I'm not wrong. Also, hi, Mrs. B, how you doing? Because I'm just thinking it's like, oh, I when I'm doing the early game stuff here, I very frequently end up behind my terminal, and I know I can still access my terminal by right-clicking on the edges of the terminal on the other side of the wire, but I do think it would be really cool if I could, say, have a one-block wide wall with facades running a cable down through the wall to a terminal, and then I can access the same terminal from both sides of the wall without having a second channel used up. That would be cool. Don't get me wrong. I know that's kind of a thing that you get from RS, but even RS doesn't do it that way. Okay, now I can start assembling things. So I can do vanilla crafting recipes now, which is excellent. Hello to a Rosanna, if I am pronouncing that right. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. But hello, welcome. How you doing? Precision mouse pointing trying to get to the edge of the terminal can be annoying. I mean, but aesthetically wise speaking as well, right? Because then I could just go, like I said, one block... better to demonstrate, I'm sorry. I'm going to demonstrate what I mean. It would be nice, because I could just go, okay, here's my wall between the two rooms, right? And let's just say this is a door or whatever, right? And I'm on my factory floor, I'm like, hey, I put a terminal right here, right? Let's say I've run a terminal and this is the terminal, like right here. Being able to access it from one side is great. But what if I'm in this room? I don't want to have to walk through to do it. Which means, okay, no big deal, there's a wire right here, plug a second terminal in. But what if I'm already at 8 channels? You can't put facades on... Well, you can put facades on the big cables, but, like, aesthetically pleasing speaking, it would be easier just to do a full block thing instead. I think that would be cool. I know it's such a tiny little thing, but, like, that would be really cool. You're doing good. Well, I'm doing quite okay. We're tinkering around with AE2, which means this is about to get really, really silly. Because it's, well, not that it's not already really, really silly. Because like this monster is a thing. Let's see here. I need to start teaching this thing recipes. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to make some blank patterns, and then we're going to teach it how to make blank patterns. So the first thing it's going to learn how to do is make more blank patterns, and more quartz glass. I will have to hook up the crusher for the quartz in a moment. But we have a buttload of recipe space. We're okay. You can access the terminal, as I say, but not by putting a facade on the other side of the cable. That's ugly and requires annoying semi-precise mousing to not clip the cable. And what I mean is, like, I could put a terminal on either side of the wall, right? So there's a terminal on one side, a terminal on the other, but it would be really nice if I didn't have to do that. It's such a tiny little complaint. I know. Do I only play Minecraft or other games too? I play many games, but these days I've been playing a lot of Minecraft. I like to play JRPGs, and I'd like to get into playing those more regularly, but I just don't have the spoons to play it sometimes. Plus, I am finding that modern JRPGs aren't, to my liking, the same as classic JRPGs, if that makes any sense. Alright, so... the first thing I want to teach this thing how to do is to make more pattern providers.
Hello.
Oh, we got a follow. Hello. Thank you for the follow. We're going to teach you how to make more pattern providers. That's going to be a thing. We'll teach you how to make that. We'll teach you how to make that out of the regular oak. And then we'll teach you how to make regular oak if you need it. Because of course there's a bit of a rabbit hole for all these recipes the first time. We'll even teach you the recipe for this, even though I have 30,000 and I am very unlikely to need it. Alright, I will have to teach you this recipe eventually, but we'll teach you this recipe because I have those stacking up. And you, again, will teach you that recipe just because I know they're stacking up. Alright. And let's start clicking recipes into boxes. Aha! Yeah. Okay. What else we got? I can craft pattern providers, or theoretically I can craft pattern providers. Maybe not 1,000. I need to know how to make Annihilation Cores. Did I not teach you that? I only taught you one. Okay, I need to teach you the Annihilation Core still. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so now you have enough material, you have enough brain power to be able to make these now, at least. But we don't have any crafting CPUs, so I should probably make some. Alright, let's make a 256, I think. We'll make a single 256 for now, and then we'll start all crafting stuff with it. Which means... I need... what is it? 27 times 3 is my number here. 60... 70, 81. I don't have enough logic cores, do I? Okay, that is 70. That's 70. So I need this many. 60, 70, 81. Yeah, I think that's how many I need. My brain is not too great on this one. I can't do mental math very well, I'm afraid. Which is awkward given the fact that I work in a casino and I know how to count. Crafting. These things. Oh, I'm out of I'm out of glass. But knows how to do it now, so theoretically, I can tell you to make me 100 of them. 200. And we don't have enough glass. Okay, sand. Let's do the sand thing. We'll even use up all of our sand in the furnace. The crazy silly furnace. I think a maxed out Mechanism Factory is still faster, but not by much. Class, please make me like 200 of this. And you're gonna say you need more too. Oh. Okay, I gotta fix that. Hang on. Quartz glass pattern is using the wrong kind of glass. Please use whatever glass we have on stash right now. Because that's the glass we're gonna teach you how to make. And we just need more quartz dust. Which is next, I think, in terms of we're going to teach you this. Oh, right, you don't even have the CPUs. What am I doing? I'm being goofy about it. I'm like, oh no, I've taught it how to do things yet. It's like, no, I haven't. Not yet. Okay, so 27 of these. We'll now upgrade to 9 of these, which will then upgrade to 3 of these, which will then upgrade to 1 of these. Okay, and now we turn this, instead of turning this into the really crazy huge stuff, or a storage unit, we are going to make it into a crafting storage. We have a brain for the PC. Yay! Okay, and we're gonna give you just the regular Felix connector. Do you think there's enough room over here? We could do them. Let's do tall ones. So for now, we're just doing this, just so we have one connected, but we're gonna do more later. But now it has a brain. Cool. So now that it has a brain, it can actually make things, like a pattern provider, for example. Please give me a pattern provider. Hooray! It makes one. Alright, make me like 10. Can you do that? You got the parts? It's gonna take a second. Because it doesn't have any, it doesn't have any coprocessors yet, but that's okay. In fact, let's teach you how to make a crafting unit, which is going to take a few things. We're going to have to teach you how to make a few of these things. We can teach you how to make this, and how to make this. Cool. We'll teach you the other patterns in a second. I will teach you these. I'll teach you all of these. So we're good in that regard. And the co-processing unit, we can teach you that. Okay, these are all vanilla crafting recipes so far. Cool. But now that we have pattern providers, we can run an electrical cable and start teaching you how to do things. I want... One of the first things I'm going to need is a multi-servo for the gears. And we're going to need a second multi-servo for plates, because they're going to be separate machines, just because of the way this works. So, I may as well make that now. Okay, and let's also take a look at what you've got installed here, because you've got... These are just regular flux linkage. I can upgrade those. We need some more integrals for that. Okay, there should be enough energy left in here for 2 of those. And then we need some more aluminum. Cool. And then flux linkage. Okay, we need some more lead. More lead gears. I think that was actually too many, but yeah, too many by 2 again. Oh well. And we're out of soul-infused gears. We are out of soul-infused ingots, as a matter of fact. So we'll set up these, and then we'll get the induction smelter working here. and then we'll upgrade them. So in the meantime, we can do this. Go. Okay, and we'll just configure that. Okay, so we've got one for the gear working die and one for the other side. We'll do that over on this side because we got lots of room over here. Grab me some smart dense cable, because that's gonna super be a thing. Okay, and how are we for flax now? Wow, that is fast. Maybe I overdid it with that machine. I might have overdone it. Just a touch. I'm gonna have to teach you how to. You know what? I'm here. Let's do it. So you know how to do this. So we'll make dense, smart. Is that Fluix dense, smart cables? Because it knows how. It's made these just now, so that's fine. So we just need to put these in here. And we'll just make me some dense, smart cables. Like 40 of them. Out of what you got. It's doing it one at a time, so it's not exactly the fastest. When I get some coprocessors on this sucker, it'll be better. And if I look at it, if I can... excuse me. If I can get over to the assemblers quick enough, you can actually see them inside the molecular assembler being assembled. It's still going, actually, so I just have to find which one it's plugged into. I'm not sure where it is. I'd have to figure out which one it's plugged into. Sometimes... Oh, you somehow hit the show closed captioning button on Twitch. It is not super accurate. You're correct, it is not. But it's cute. I have the closed captioning option add-on present if people want it. But yes, you're right. It's not terribly accurate. Okay, now because the pattern provider is being used the way it is, I have to do it like... I actually have to use the thin ones for these. Otherwise it's gonna start getting weird. So we've got multi-servo, multi-servo. Have them set to in-out on the top. Have them set to auto outputs. Do that for both of them. And then we can run on the electrical cable over. Right? Right. Okay, we can actually pull this out now because we'll start automating that. Go. And this one gets to be gears, and the other one gets to be not gears. You put a couple of screenshots in Stream Chatter on Discord. Oh, please. I love how inaccurate it is sometimes. You can kind of figure it out, but, like, I love how inaccurate it gets. So let's see here. Let's see how bad it is reading my voice here. Is out for X tastes more cables. Oh no! Oh no! It is, the voice detection is not great because I do have an accent. Well, I mean, everybody does, but still. That's amusing. Oh, that's terrible. Yes, everybody has an accent. Mine is very Canadian. Go figure. Okay, so in theory, I can now access these multi-servos, which is excellent. Alright, so let's teach it how to make some gears. Signalium gears is the first one, I think. Alright, Signalium gear, you can get rid of this because we have that already prepped. And there's no way to extract the gear working die once it's in there. Aluminum gear. Same thing. Electrum gear, because that's eventually going to be a thing. Soul gear. They're called soul-infused gear. We're also going to have to teach you how to make soul-infused ingots as well, but I'll get to that in a second. Actually, wait, I think I can do that right now, actually. Where's my induction smelter? There's my induction smelter. Give me that. Cable! Like so. Then we can give myself another pattern provider for that silly little thing. Okay, and we're going to have to make another induction smelter. I remember we're going to need another induction smelter because if I use this one for 3, I need to use the lock on the one that does 2, otherwise it's going to get jammed when I do lots of things at once. And it's just as well that I have multiples of those anyways, because there's only so many recipe squares I have. I need a lock. Not a block, a lock. And I forget what it's called exactly. It's a slot blocker is what I'm looking for. There it is. Slot seal is what it's called. So we do that for the second one. I may as well teach you how to make the soul-infused ingots in the induction smelter. And you're going to eventually complain because you don't have enough appetite. And the soul sand dust is made specifically in the pulverizer. We're going to have to do that too. So I may as well grab the pulverizer. I love that I've started down a rabbit hole of this design here. Automation is kind of like that. Okay, so you get this recipe. You are the gear working die, which gets all the gear recipes. You are a basic induction smelter. That's the triple. Let's hit you up as the triple. Anglophone Canadians supposedly have one of the most neutral accents in the English language. To a degree, I suppose. But yes, there is a bit of an accent, and it's enough to throw off a lot of voice detection. Okay, we can make a second induction smelter in a second here and pop that over for a second. We can set up the advanced inscriber as well. We're going to make a bunch of those, so we'll do that in a minute. We are going to teach you how to make the integral components, because that's going to be a thing. I would rather have this automated. And I'm going to teach you this because I'm going to need it, but I'm not going to need it as much as you think. Okay, we can teach you this. Then we can teach you this. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Right, because I need to do it this way. I may have issue with this recipe, so I'll hold off on doing that one for now. Endurium is complicated. We have both forms of the Electrum right now, so we'll hold off on that. Same with the Invar. Did make Electrum seeds, right? Yes, I did. I'll hold off on those for now. What else did I need? I need flux linkage. We're going to teach you these because I'm going to be making a bunch of these at some point or another, which means I need this recipe. Oh, nope, wrong recipe. Hang on. I might need this recipe. That's the first one that goes in the other one. We'll need this recipe. That's a straight crafting recipe. What else do I need? Nothing? We can give you this. So this is a straight crafting recipe, this is a straight crafting recipe, this is a straight crafting recipe. This is also a straight crafting recipe, but I feel like I'm not going to be making too many of these Endurium linkages. And the Twinite ones, maybe? We'll see how many of that goes. We'll stop at Endurium for now. So these are all straight crafting recipes. Do that. Also, it also doesn't help, if I'm going to be honest, it also doesn't help that I have a habit of slurring when I speak because I get lazy. So that's a secondary side effect. So, let's just make 3 of these for now. Oh, it needs to make lead gears. I thought I taught you how to make lead gears. Oh, I didn't actually put it in the machine. And I don't know which one it is. So this is gears. This is plates. Now we have an example so we can work off of that. Okay, please make me 3 of these. And 3. Oh, I keep accidentally tapping my caps lock button. Alright, and make me a integral. Do you have materials on hand to make the resonant integral? You do. I like it. Oh, I forgot. Beep boop. Yeah. One of the accessibility options that I always turn on Windows is whenever you hit any of the lock keys, it beeps at you, just so you know that you pressed it by accident. That's what that is. It's because I keep tapping the caps lock key instead of shift. Hardened glass is the thing I wanted. I didn't teach you how to make that yet, so there you go. Should also... oh, wrong sand. First of all, I'm going to teach you how to make the other sand. On sand. Because look, that's sandstone, that's sandstone, that's sandstone. I would like to please make... there's a recipe for sand. Teach you that first. If I put that in here, it should start using this sand whenever I ask it for sand now. Yay! We'll teach you this. I don't think that's going to come up very often, but there it is. And the hardened glass goes in the... it's a triple, so that goes in this one. I'm gonna have to teach you how to make soul sand as well. You'd also turn it on, but you're not sure if you could change the associated sound. I don't know if you can. It'd be cool if you could. Because it's a little bit, it is a little bit abrasive, that particular sound. But I guess by design, so it's like you're supposed to know for sure that, oops, you did a goof on that, you know what I mean? Secondary benefit, by the way, secondary benefit of having a full block terminal instead of just the flat screen ones, that occurs to me. I could set up a pattern encoding terminal, for example, and have an extraction bus, export bus, pushing blank patterns into it, so I will never run out of blank patterns. I can't do that with the existing system. That would be really cool, right? It's just baked in. It becomes just baked into the system now. So, oh, hey, I'm making a crap load of AE2 recipes, and I don't want to run out of blank patterns. So the solution is just to keep pulling blank patterns. Or you could automate it, which is kind of the point of AE2 to begin with. Just saying. Like, that would be absolutely a great idea. And then you could also, then you wouldn't... Another secondary benefit, you wouldn't need interfaces as much in the same space as your crafting terminals, because now you can pipe things in and out of your crafting terminals. I'm waiting for this to seem like a bad idea. This all seems like super convenient to me. Okay, let me make another induction smelter. I mean, you don't have to make it cheap. You could make it so that it takes a few steps to do things. Oh, I made the integral and I never picked it up. Like, you can make it so that you can't make it until you can access some more advanced stuff from AE2. Like, that's totally acceptable as far as I'm concerned. But you end up with systems like what I've got here,